Welcome everyone to the third annual Small Biz Challenge presented by Inc. and the UPS Store. We're kicking off this year's Small Biz Challenge with a roundtable discussion with some amazing business experts. I'm Shannon Lanier, a news anchor and host of Daddy Duty 365, and I'll be guiding you along this amazing time together. We want you to stay with us because we're going to be talking to each of our small business experts on how they pivoted in response to the events of this past year, what challenges can be expected on the small business landscape in the coming months, and the most valuable lessons our panelists have learned through their years as entrepreneurs and business leaders. To help us do this, we have the one and only Carla Hall. Now, Carla Hall first won over audience competing on Bravo's Top Chef and Top Chef All-Stars. She co-hosted ABC's Emmy Award-winning lifestyle series, The Chew, and she is a featured host and judge on Food Network. Carla is also on a weekly podcast, Say Yes with Carla Hall, and her latest cookbook, Carla Hall's Soul Food, Every Day and Celebration. Please welcome the extraordinary Carla Hall.
Shannon, thank you. I feel like I need you in my life, like soul food. Hey, everybody. Yes, I am Carla Hall, author, chef, and TV host. I am so excited to co-host this year's UPS Store Small Biz Challenge. And I'm really interested in hearing from my panelists to see how these different industries have responded to this last year. It's going to be really exciting, like Shannon said.
All right, now it's time to introduce our amazing panelists for the day. First up, Sarah Paiji Yoo. She's the CEO and co-founder of Blueland, which is reimagining cleaning products to eliminate single-use plastic packaging. Now, Sarah is a serial retail entrepreneur passionate about sustainability and innovation. Sarah was most recently featured on this season's Shark Tank, and she's a wife and mother that lives in New York City. And next we have Tristan Walker, CEO and founder of Walker and Company Brands. Now his company is at the forefront of making health and beauty simple for people of color, which was, check this out, acquired by Procter & Gamble in 2018. Also, he is a father and husband living in Atlanta, Georgia. And last but not least, Alexa von Tobel. She's the founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital. It's a $200 million early-stage venture capital firm. And Alexa is a New York Times bestselling author of Financially Fearless and Financially Forward. Make sure y'all read that book. And the host of Inc.'s podcast, The Founders Project with Alexa von Tobel. She's also a wife and mother living in New York City. Give it up to all of our panelists. I know you're at home. Still give it up. Much love to them. All right. Now it's time to kick off this amazing discussion. And for this, we want to really talk about how each of our experts have pivoted in response to the events of this past year. So Carla, take it away.
Thank you, Shannon. And thanks to all of you all for being here today. Look, we know it's been a challenging year, but growth and change are challenging. And we're excited to be looking forward to the future. Absolutely. And I'm always saying there are no mistakes in the universe, even though they're really hard. So to kick off our discussion, I'd like to learn a little bit more about how each of you has had to pivot over the last year and what was your biggest challenge. Sarah, I want to start out with you.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, demand for home cleaning products like Blueland has surged over the past year. Not only were people washing their hands and cleaning their surfaces more than ever, they're also home more and cooking more. So they're washing their dishes more than ever, doing more laundry. And, when all this started to happen, we were just 8 months in. So less than a year old when our demand just surged over 300% overnight. We really had to, all of a sudden we were out of inventory. We had to pause down new customer marketing and shift our team's focus over to customer service and operations. And we had to slow down our operations, do things like implement split shifts in the warehouses and to keep our team safe, which felt backwards to do given we were seeing more demand and growth than ever. But, our biggest pivot was probably around our brand and product positioning and education. Blueland has been a direct-to-consumer first brand since inception. We always knew we wanted a direct relationship with the customer and a direct line of communication and feedback with the customer, especially given that, with Blueland, we're asking customers to adopt a new behavior by putting out this brand new form factor of tablet-based cleaning products. And really, during the past year, the direct relationship has translated into this really valuable and continuous customer feedback loop at a time when customer priorities were rapidly and dramatically shifting. Consumers that previously said they staunchly prioritize natural and non-toxic or eco were suddenly open to trading these benefits for disinfectant claims. So it was really helpful to understand what concerns or questions our customers had. And, unlike physical products sold in physical stores, unlike, physical packaging, we could easily update our website descriptions and emails and social media messaging to more directly address these concerns. As part of that pivot, we also doubled down on our direct online growth and halted our plans, or delayed rather, last year to do the larger physical store retail rollout that we had initially planned for.
As you're talking, I just hear 300% growth while you are a baby. Like, go be fabulous. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, related to that, I guess to your question of like what our biggest challenge was is related to that. Team obviously is foundational to and enables everything we do. And so for us to grow rapidly and effectively, support our customers, we also needed to grow our team quickly. But that was incredibly challenging because while we were, managing all this growth, we were also learning to recruit, onboard, and even interact as ourselves as a team in a way that we never had done before. And so all of that was, quite a steep learning curve. And now we actually have way more people on our team that I've never met in person than I've actually met in person. And, now only a third of our team is in New York City versus, again, prior to this past year, nearly our entire team was based in New York City.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to reserve them for later because just hiring on the spot like that, like, go, I need you, I need a body, that's really tough to see how they last in the organization. And, that's just really, really challenging. Tristan, I want to ask you the same thing. So how did you pivot over the last year and what was your biggest challenge?
Yeah. I had to work furiously to expand my capacity for empathy. It was a challenge, but also our greatest opportunity, I think. And let's remember, we can't pivot without acknowledgement and reflection, right? I lead a team that's majority people of color, and 2020 was not easy for us. It was a time for each of us to really remember first that we're human. Before we're colleagues, working at a company, we're sons, we're daughters, we're husbands, we're community members, right? We certainly have things we deal with at work, but also like completely unrelated things at home too. We have to go through every single day, right? And it's important, particularly in my seat, to recognize that we have to offer each other grace, like grace to lean into our humanness. So what did that mean for us? First, taking time to take care of your family, right? The family business. We have these 6 values at the company, and one of them is wellness. And the way we like to define it is, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of the business, right? If you're not taking care of the family, you're not taking care of the business. And what better time than 2020 to really test that value, right? Work from home. Take a half day if you need for that dentist appointment, and so on, right? Like this really ended up to be our best year ever, surprisingly. And I like to think it's because of the grace we offered each other. By taking care of ourselves, we take care of the business. And it's really a radical thought in business that shouldn't really be that radical, Carla. And, shame on me for not expanding that capacity for empathy sooner.
Tristan, I just want to say that I appreciate you talking about not only the work that you're doing, but also because you are in health and beauty and one of your values is wellness, but to mention what is happening at home because the lines were very blurred in this last year. And so I think for the first time, we're really able to see it's not just the person who's sitting at the desk at work, because it's like what happens before you get to work and what happens when you leave work. And those lines are blurred, and all of that is about
Yeah,
wellness.
agreed. And that's okay. The one thing that I realized is it got more blurred throughout 2020. And the reason it was okay and even better is because I knew my why, why we started this company in the first place, why I decided to work with the colleagues that I have, how I put myself in a position where I can kind of treat wellness as seriously as I encourage other people to do it as well, right? So there's an expectation for how we show up. And I can't speak for anyone else because I don't know anything else other than what we've done, and it's worked pretty well for us.
Alexa, I'm going to ask you the same thing. I mean, how have you pivoted in this last year, and what was your biggest challenge?
First of all, what a great question. And Tristan, I just want to echo so many of the things you just said. I couldn't believe, I couldn't agree with more the need for empathy through this last year. I would summarize the last year as what I call ABL, always be learning. And I think we entered a year where a lot of the infrastructure, milestones, the way we work, everything got turned upside down at the same time that we all were carrying tremendous anxiety around the state of the world, the state of the country, et cetera. And I think that it really was a year for listening. And one of the things, so remember, at Inspired Capital, we're a team. So, I have a team of employees that, I'm working with and managing. And then on top of that, we have about 30 companies that we're investors in. So helping them quickly pull back and, to Sarah's point of the world was changing. How's it going to change your business? Some of the businesses exploded with volume. Some of them, got nervous and scared, like many businesses have. And so really just reminding people, ABL, always be learning, listening to your customers. Where's the puck going? How do you make sure you stay extremely flexible and nimble? So that was, I think, a big piece of it. I think you asked what was the hardest part. And I'll say this, I'm a mom of 3 little kids. My sweet little babies literally turned 2, 3, and 6 during COVID. And I think the biggest challenge, I also think, was the biggest gift. I think this 1990s, 1980s view of professionalism with the briefcase and the black suit, I hope we burned all of those down quite early. I'm a woman running a massive venture capital firm who's a working mom, and I've always been now for a while a working mom. I think we just got to bring a very different ourselves to the table in a way that it was challenging because at times we're like relearning boundaries, and a 2-year-old doesn't love a boundary, as everyone knows. But on the most sincere note, I think it was really this unique moment for resetting as a culture, as a society, how we work, how we show up to work, and getting rid of this honestly pretty outdated veneer of professionalism, which is you can be professional with screaming kids in the background as long as you can come to the right conclusion and make the right decision, because that's what doing your job is. And so I think that while that was a challenge we're all navigating truly hand in hand as a society across the globe, I think it was an absolute breakthrough. And I don't know about you guys, but for all of our companies, they found tremendous capital that they no longer need to spend on planes, trains, hotels, all of these things that we were all doing that was not good for the planet, definitely not good for our well-being. And I think I sort of summarized this. I think we all found 12 hours in our week that we got back. And that 12 hours from the cars, planes, trains, packing, running, cabs, taxis, Ubers, got put back into work and into our families. And I think that that's a pretty big win. So that challenge that I think we were all learning through live actually is a pretty massive opportunity. And the last thing I'll just say is, I think we learned that through 2020, leadership has never been more important, that you're not just a leader of your entity and your organization, but CEOs had really big jobs through 2020 because they became carriers of culture, of values on far broader problems, from everything that we went through in 2020 to sustainability in the planet. And so I do think the leadership bar went up.
Well, hopefully things will continue to change because I know a lot of people have gone through a lot of changes. Now, hopefully those things will be a thing of the past and we can go forward to a better world and a better business environment. But I would like to talk about some of the changes to small businesses and to the small business landscape that we can expect in the future. We just talked about working from home more. What other changes can we expect? And I'll, hand it back over to Carla to talk about some of this stuff as well.
All right. Well, Tristan, you speak so passionately about wellness and health and balance. So, what are you most excited for in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah. So, Carla, I think I'm most excited about like two things, I guess. First is the fact that companies now have to recognize that they have to treat their people better. How they work, how they're reviewed, how they're fairly compensated, right? Like happiness in the workplace can truly, finally, like be correlated to better business outcomes, and it's about time. If you want to retain the best and brightest, you have to just show up differently, and I'm most excited that it's happening. Second, I've dedicated my life to the intersection of three things. First, the demographic shift happening in this country and the cultural influence of people of color within it. Technology and its impact not only on businesses, but also it's mapped back to this demographic shift, right? So how do you kind of promulgate this cultural influence and accelerate it, right? And then lastly, the building of great brands. And I think, the best companies of the future will be the ones to embrace all three. And great, like billion-dollar brands no longer dominate and influence anymore. Like the small, committed brands with loyal followings, good values, strong digital presence, like can actually win. I know it because we did it. Um, and I just truly believe that this shift from like large dominant players to like smaller ones like our own will be permanent and frankly better for consumers, employees alike.
Well, when you talk about demographics and tech, and even shifting from larger brands, I mean, you can probably apply that also to cities. How people found that they could work from anywhere. Do you also see that part of the health and wellness is going to a smaller city? I mean, moving out of the larger cities, and then and some places cheaper that actually adds to your wellness.
Absolutely, Carla. I could speak about this very directly. I think it's less about cities versus suburbs or anything. It's just live where you want to live. My company was in the Bay Area. When we sold the company, I deliberately moved, my company, my family to Atlanta, Georgia. This is where we are now. And there are a number of reasons for that on the business side, like here's where our customers are and that sort of thing. But frankly, I wanted to raise my two Black sons in an environment where they see other Black folks thriving and at scale. I wanted to live in a place where I actually buy a house that has space, right? Where we can get out and walk, where we can actually live. I want to run a company in a place where diversity is embraced, where we can recruit, afford to recruit. And Atlanta made a hell of a lot of sense. And it was the best like cost of living or just the best kind of life arbitrage I've ever experienced in my entire life. And the wonderful thing about kind of what we're discussing here is you can live wherever you want and you can demand it. We never had that
Right.
opportunity in the past. And, what better time to do a complete reassessment of, not only the values that you have, but what you want to do and where you want to be, because you can do it. Right. And that's, well, I guess the third thing that I'm most excited about. And I appreciate you bringing it out because it's a really important consideration.
No, I love that. My husband and I are in Atlanta for like 4 weeks because we're being nomadic because our house in DC has been worked on. But it's been really great going to different cities and being locals. And because of another business, like, Airbnb, we're able to do that and to try out different cities, which has been really fantastic.
That's spot
Mhm.
on. Welcome to Atlanta.
Thank you. Alexa, you talk about ABL, always be learning. So, what are you most excited about in 2021 and beyond?
I think there's a handful of categories that I'm really excited about. One just being the democratization of the American wallet, which is we are seeing this younger generation really interested in personal finance. And obviously that's been a lot of my life's work has been around helping empower the American wallet. But we've just seen, because of COVID, through COVID, the beginning of the year, businesses like Public and Robinhood and a bunch of others that are helping people start to think about, how do I think about my wallet long term? And I think that's been a great one. Another one is telemedicine. I think we are finding that doctors, there's so much efficiency to being able to use technologies through remoteness to be able to treat patients and take care of people. And so we've gotten pretty excited about some of those interesting type businesses. And then finally, we're really into the future of the creator economy and distributed workforces, and believe that genie left that bottle. And, while we may still go back to offices in some capacity, that we have fundamentally changed the way that we will live and work, and that we're in a tectonic shift in terms of what the future will look like over the next decade. And we're watching some of those little stems grow. So there's been a bunch of amazing technologies we've gotten to invest in.
Well, when you talk about especially telemedicine, and when I think about that, I think about I have to always be an advocate for myself. So what other businesses, because I think that it's an the customer and the business, to really have a partnership there, rather than, walk into a business and saying, you're gonna do everything for me. Like, it's not a partnership. I feel like I choose a company the same way that they would choose me. So how do you see that landscape changing, like just being advocates on both sides for both parties?
I think the biggest way that we think about it, Carla, is that allowing the consumer to own their data. So in making that really easy. So you want to see one doctor and leave and go see another, but that data travels with you, and it's easy for you to make those switches. And I think, so we're seeing that on so many levels, whether it's around personal finance or whether it's around the future of social, the fact that your data is yours, you can seamlessly take it, and it allows you to have more choice in terms of finding the right fit for whatever your needs may be across many, many categories. So I'm really long the consumer. We always said client comes first, but the future is actually starting to show that on a far more deeper level. Last thing I'll just say is the ability to work from anywhere and earn income is absolutely exploding. And I think that really gives us back. We used to work at my grandfather worked at one company for 40 years. Each year he got 2 weeks of vacation that was paid for, and then was supposed to retire. We're just throwing that entire construct out the window, which is you could work from anywhere, begin to make income on your own for yourself, take breaks, take sabbaticals, take paternity and maternity leave. We're starting to just see this society is shifting. It's quite simple. And, COVID was, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that we're just seeing some incredibly big benefits to our society as a result, long term. Obviously, there are lots of stresses, but there's some really good things coming out of it.
So Sarah, you talked about that you had 300% growth in this last year, which is a tremendous amount of growth, and that you all, I guess, are sort of settling and finding your place. But what are you most excited about in 2021? You talked about, cleaning products and also packaging, because people are ordering more and more things at home.
Yeah, I mean, for us, again, being still a pretty young business, I am, so excited about now being able to accelerate our growth based on just this incredible, one, resilience and grit that we've built, but also all the capabilities that we developed in 2020 in response to everything happened. I think we've all invested so much time this past year in gaining our footing individually in our personal lives, as well as, broadly across our organizations. And truly, kudos to all of us. We adapted to not only a new way of working, but also, new customer preferences, new product preference, et cetera. And it was so hard. But now excited to, move forward and grow and really flourish off of that foundation. I think, also just looking around to other startup peers, as well as, a lot of local businesses around where I live. When physical retail shut down, it was hard, but it was also inspiring to see how many small businesses developed their strategies on, for example, how to sell online on their own websites or on Amazon if they weren't already doing it. And I think, all of these capabilities are examples of ones that we didn't have prior, but now, have been built, and we can focus on scaling them, this year and beyond.
Well, when I look at small businesses, and what can you say to small businesses when, you know, every line item is, a challenge, right, in your cost? But when you look at cleaning products and you look at packaging, especially for consumer businesses, and you want to be sustainable, but when you look at those sustainable products, they're expensive. So, what do you say to those small businesses, how they can sort of have an on ramp to changing or getting with sustainable, packaging and just the sustainable times?
Yeah, I think, certainly, I think, the big thing with sustainability that I really encourage is, focusing on progress over perfection, because it is true. It's impossible for us to be perfect. And there's certainly, I'm sure, for folks, a long list of things they'd ideally be doing if they had infinite amount of time and resources and money. But it really is, picking your battles and picking the areas where you really do believe that you can make a swap for the better. But, have it also be a financially sound decision for your business. With Blue Land, part of what took us so long to get to the market was because, my co-founder and I were we did not want to launch until we had a product that could be money saving to the end consumer or to small businesses, right? And so, one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that our hand soap tablets and our cleaning spray refills all are $2 or less, which at that price point, it's really nice because then as a consumer, a small business, you can look at them and you're like, wow, like not only am I doing something great for the planet, but these products actually save me money and actually are, most all times cheaper than going out and buying a new plastic bottle of, cleaner that's made of sort of 90% plus water. And so I think it's looking for, opportunities like that where you can swap things out. And you'd be surprised as to, how many other places there are where you can, take a step for your business to be more eco, and there isn't actually a trade-off, and it doesn't actually, cost you more.
Well, Carla did make a good point about saving money, because I know all businesses, especially those mom and pop shops, want to save money. So maybe Tristan or Alexa, do you have any other tips for like small businesses?
I would just quickly say, and I advised dozens of businesses recently, always have your worst case scenario plan. And what I mean by that is, if 3 or 4 big things you're planning on all go sideways or don't work, have a true kind of doomsday scenario. And the reason for it is, one, by having that plan and knowing what you would do and how you would survive, it gets you better sprint ready, because then it allows you to actually be more risk comfortable and take bigger swings, because worst case scenario, I have a plan that would get us through a few really bad quarters. So I really am into scenario planning and strategy planning. Tristan, I don't know what you would add, but that's a big one for me. I'm a planner by nature.
I think you hit the nail right on the head.
So plan. Okay. Well, I also know that social issues are an especially serious priority for young entrepreneurs. And we actually, we love our surveys. So our survey showed that small business owners aged 18 to 45 are actually more likely to say they're actively trying to increase diversity of their workforce than their counterparts that are aged 46 to 75 years of age, in that age range. So as new generations of entrepreneurs continue to establish themselves, we can only expect more emphasis on diversity. I think that's so important. I know, Tristan, you've worked a lot in that space, so hopefully we'll continue to increase that diversity in the places we go. But I think that's one of the things that we all have learned this last year is the importance of diversity. So I'll let Carla talk more about maybe other lessons that you guys have learned along the way.
All right, Tristan. So the purpose of Walker and Company is to make health and beauty simple for people of color. I'm sure that you would agree, not to put words into your mouth, but I'm sure you would agree that there's currently an increased emphasis on diversity and inclusion throughout the health and beauty space. I know I'm looking for certain products and I'm seeing more. There's also an increased emphasis in small business in general. But what does that mean? Are we talking about products or employees within the company or both?
I hope everything, Carla. Clearly, like there are more brands like ours in the aisles, which is fantastic. But I also think of those founders' abilities to build irresistible and culturally impactful brands that force retailers and large brands to take them seriously. The way I think about it is like follow the cultural connection, follow the money. And one thing that I don't like seeing, despite the optimism I have for what's happening and what you mentioned, are these like 15% pledges from larger players in the space. And for folks who might be unfamiliar with it, it's this idea of a 15% pledge being, dedicate 15% of your aisle space to brands from Black founders, for example. The idea being that 15% of the country is Black, so let's have an environment that reflects the current diversity of America. That's all well and good, but I think it's limiting. We're 15% of the population, but not 15% of the consumer influence. Why 15%, not 85%? And it's funny because when I rebut with that question, few folks actually have an answer for why not. So the lesson and advice that I have for any small business or business period is to build for the future, not today. The future looks very different, and if you build different, you build better. And follow the cultural connection and influence, and you'll be just fine.
Alexa, well, who is somebody that you look to for knowledge as you were first starting out?
I was so fortunate, Carla. I have a rule, which is have a mentor from every generation. And I had a mentor who was in their 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. I was 23 when I started Learn Best and dropped out of business school. And the reason I liked that was one, and I gave them the psychological safe space to just completely tell me what I was terrible at. And I was like, please, I have one other saying, it's LITTP, lean into the pain, to lean into feedback. And as painful as it is as a young person to have somebody tell you, hey, you did a really bad job in that meeting, or you're not presenting your company well, it's confusing, or the product's just not good, it's not good enough. But when people tell you that, they're actually doing you a favor. And so I always say I lean into people that tell me really hard feedback, and I'm really grateful for it. And sometimes it takes me a minute to be grateful for it if it's really bad feedback. But I do think you want mentors. You want to give them the psychological safety to really coach you on what you can do better. And then the reason I like them from different decades is each world's changing. Each different decade has different tidbits of insights. And I'll give you an example. My 74-year-old mentor says, pick up the phone no matter what for any conversation that even an instinct in you says, this is sensitive. Pick up the phone. And that was such a great lesson to learn when I was 23 years old. And I still do it today.
No, I love that. I mean, you're right. Different generations, different perspectives. Sarah, well, let me ask you, what's the one thing that surprised you the most when starting your business? Something that you just didn't anticipate or that you were surprised to find out?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest one was, I don't know. So with Blueland, Blueland is actually the fourth business that I've had the opportunity to launch. And so certainly I thought, by this one, it would be a lot easier. And I've just learned that, look, like oftentimes there's no silver bullet, right? There's no guidebook out there. There's no answer. It's completely normal and expected to feel scared and to feel like you don't know what the right path forward is, and that it's important to not get overwhelmed by this sheer size of what you're trying to take on and just focus on the next step. So for example, with us, the idea was we were going to take these cleaning sprays, right, that are this big and shrink them down like 100 times to these tiny tablets and make it a thing where people just fill up their bottles with water they have at home and drop in a tablet. And, I wasn't a chemist. I didn't know the first place to start. And, initially you think that, there's someone you can go to, or there's somewhere you can go that can help make this for you and just turn this into reality. And there just simply wasn't, right? And there wasn't some sort of like secret answer. It's like I literally just turned to Google, right, and just tried to look for cleaning manufacturers. And when they said that they couldn't do this for me because they didn't have tablet machinery, I thought, who has tablet machinery? Okay, candy manufacturers and vitamin supplement manufacturers. And so you just pick up the phone and I called them and just try to learn as much as I can from that process. And there I hit another wall where people were like, we can't do this. You have to formulate, you have to create this yourself. And I was like, well, I'm not a chemist. And I had no chemist friends. And so I turned to LinkedIn and just started looking for chemists who had backgrounds in cleaning and in tablets. And, you just kind of just take it day by day, step by step. And I do believe that you will get where you're going. So I don't think you should be discouraged by not sort of having the big picture and the roadmap and all the answers right in front of you. But, trust yourself, have grit, and do everything you can to see it through.
What I hear you saying is that you believed in your idea, and so you kept going.
But I also believed that one of the only things I could be sure about was that my idea wasn't 100% perfect. Like, in fact, there were a lot of flaws to it. So I think, I was very dead set on moving forward and pushing this forward, but I was very open throughout the process to learning and taking feedback and, making sure that, I wasn't just creating a product for myself as the lone consumer.
That's a good point that you make too, because you're like, if it doesn't exist, then you make it exist, and that proves that there's a need for that product because nobody else is doing it. So, I mean, that's a good little checklist. Like, okay, nobody's doing this. I should be doing this.
Yeah,
right?
but you'll get so many people that say like, well, why hasn't it been done? There must be a reason why hasn't been done, because it's either impossible or it's not an attractive product. You have a dozen companies that, do close to $1 billion or more, in this space. Why aren't they doing it? But, it's that balance. It's a balance of, believing in your vision and trusting your gut, but also, again, being open to feedback from consumers and potential partners.
Tristan, I'm sure we have a lot of viewers who have pivoted and some have reinvented themselves, who are watching us today. What would you say to someone working to get their small business off the ground? And I know that's a big question, but what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, first just start. I know it's perhaps unsatisfying, but I think we let a lot kind of get into us before we get started. Um, One thing that I've learned over time that got me kind of most motivated to start the company that I started was, to think, what am I the best person in the world to do? Right? Like, it's a tall order, right? I have a CPG business. I've never done CPG before. Like, why do I fundamentally believe that I'm the best person in the world to do it? Well, look, there are almost 8 billion people on the planet, each of whom have a unique lived experience. That lived experience can actually generate unique innovation, right? In 2013, I find myself in continual frustration of my not getting products that kind of worked for my own skin type. I was frustrated walking down retail aisles and seeing products that have not changed, that have not been marketed to me, and the ones that were marketed to me were embarrassing and disrespectful. Right. So in 2013, at that time, I happened to be in Silicon Valley. I was one of the few kind of Black men in Silicon Valley who was in a position to raise the capital to start this company. I had to do the thing that I was uniquely positioned to do at that one period of time to do. The last thing I'd say, Carla, is, so the best advice that I got was to do what you feel you're fundamentally the best in the world to do based on your lived experience. But I kind of add the worst advice that I've received, and it's to follow your dreams. I think that that's some of the worst advice that folks get, really for two reasons, Carla. First, sometimes people forget that some dreams actually turn into nightmares, but that's neither here nor there. But second, and more important, it takes you off your game to focus on your own authentic lived experience. If you're not focused on the thing that you're uniquely positioned to do, well, you know what? Somebody else will be. And they'll come to compete. Being an entrepreneur is hard enough. Being a CEO is really, really hard. It's one of the worst jobs in the world, right? Albeit incredibly rewarding. So you might as well be, uniquely positioned to do that thing. Otherwise, it'll be miserable. And that's the kind of inspiration I try to offer to other people. Think about your lived experience and lean into it.
Well, speaking of that, you were featured in Bloomberg as part of a piece that you offered up some life lessons. And I want to ask you a little bit more about it. You suggested that entrepreneurs should spend the first third of their life learning, the second earning, and the third returning. So what do you mean by all of that? I mean, I think that the first 2/3 make sense. So can you unpack a little bit like what that last third is, returning?
Yeah, I can try. I mean, it's not just entrepreneurial advice; it's life advice that I got that I really benefited from when I was 20 years old. There was a gentleman at the company that I was in, pretty well known and respected. He called me in his office and he said, "Tristan, I have the strategy around how to live your life." And I said, "I'd love to hear it." And he told me that exactly. Now, here's a guy who left university when he was 20. He had an incredibly successful career. The day he turned kind of 40, he retired, and now he's doing all type of philanthropic stuff. Um, he said that too many folks try and put the return before the earn, which prevents their ability to scale their kind of impact in their return. And it was a really important kind of message for me. It's less about kind of the third, Carla, and I think the sequencing kind of matters. So for me, I think having the kind of economic viability and capital to deliver scalable returns and giving back to the community is important, right? So I spent the first third of that life just learning, living, right? That lived experience that I talk about. The second third is the earn, right? So developing Walker and Company, creating value, selling the company, et cetera. Now we're in a position where we can return back to our consumers who trusted us so well, especially in a time, you think about 2020, when folks, we needed to reflect on their humanness too, right? Before they're consumers, they're people, their fathers, their brothers, et cetera, right? So what can we do in support of their own humanness? And we did a lot of things in 2020 to do that. But what I mean by the return thing, Carla, is you can call it philanthropy, you can call it kind of economic justice, you can call it anything that you want it to do. But I think about kind of scalable impact as a result of your kind of having the earned portion of the lived experience before you return.
I got a little bit of chills with this whole 360 view. Alexa, I came across an article in Inc. that said you've been known to help business owners who reach out via IG for advice. So what are some of the most asked questions that you've received, and how have you answered them in just such that, like a quick little blurb to them, like as you're on Instagram?
Like with one eye open, like as I'm trying to go to sleep. No, I really mean it. I feel so lucky that I had a few people just go out of their way to be great friends and mentors to me as I was starting my business, and candidly, like a young puppy trying to figure things out. And I really do try to pay it forward. And I just think that, the startup ecosystem is blossoming and exploding. And probably the biggest question I really get is, just people having moments of real self-doubt. I think, Tristan just said it, and I know Sarah was, nodding. Being a founder is the hardest job. And actually, it's the only job that as you get better at it, it gets harder. As the business gets bigger, it gets harder. It gets more complex. The problems are even, again, by the end of, when LearnVest was hundreds of people, the problems that came to my plate were gnarly and complicated, and otherwise somebody would have solved them. And so, it's really those self-doubts where people are like, can I do this? And I always say founders need two key things. You need to be an exceptional problem solver, and you have to have tenacity to never give up. And companies die for two reasons. They run out of cash or they run out of cash. So just don't run out of cash and don't give up. And so it's just reminding people that, like, you're going to have bad days. I had terrible days. And if it wasn't for my husband, who would be like, get back in the ring. You're good. You got this. You need the cheerleaders. And so it's really just sometimes either making an intro or being a cheerleader. And I think it goes really far.
No, I'm sure that people do appreciate it. Yeah.
She brought up a good point. You mentioned the word mentors. I was wondering if you could tell us the importance of even seasoned business owners and entrepreneurs having mentors or sponsors through this journey.
I mean, sponsors, mentors, coaches. I then got executive coaches. Even after I sold my business to Northwestern Mutual, they brought in a SWAT team of coaches. I really do believe, just like anything else, if you're going to go train for a marathon, you're probably going to ask some people who've run the marathon before and get some coaches and some training and read some blogs. Why would being a CEO be any different? And so I really, I was an athlete in college. And so I very much so believe in making sure you have a coach at all times.
Sarah, in an interview, you hinted that Blueland may be expanding beyond cleaning products. Can you describe to our viewers how a business owner may know when it's time to consider expanding into new categories, and how do you decide which ones to venture into? And maybe even how do you decide when to contract, and not do so much? So either way.
Yeah, lots of thoughts on that one. And it's hard, being so close to especially the innovation that I see that R&D team is capable of. It's so hard to not want to just get all of it out there. And of course, new products are exciting and they're fun and they drive buzz and, excitement from your community. But big one. And initially, when the idea for Blue Land was just on paper, we had these like crazy goals of like year 1 cleaning products, like year 2 personal care, year 3 beauty, food, like and it wasn't rooted in the actual realities of operating and growing a stable business. And I think ultimately, there's no confusion on our team that our most important priority on the product development side is with our existing products, right? Like amazing products. Like that's your best form of marketing, right? Like people always ask me like, oh, what's the silver bullet for marketing? How have you grown your Instagram followers so fast? How have you guys grown top line so fast? And it's, it's an amazing product and amazing service because, that's what's going to drive your word of mouth. I'll take word of mouth all day over, Facebook ads or TV commercials. But more so than that, that's what drives a healthy business because you want your customers to love your product so much that not only are they telling their friends, but they're coming back and they're repurchasing with you, and then they're buying all the other things that you then want to potentially launch down the road because they have such customer love and confidence in what you've put out there to date. So I think, the first step is, before getting too excited about moving on to the new, making sure that you're building a strong foundation, and every product that you put out there, you're sort of over the moon about and extremely proud about, and if not, you're being absolutely, rigorous about, addressing and improving all of the, concerns and feedback that you're getting from your customers and your community. And then after that, I think as we do think about new products, I think there's probably people with, a range of philosophies. There's certainly folks that say that, you have to have a vision that people don't know what they want or need if it doesn't exist yet. And I understand that. Like, I think Steve Jobs said he trusted individuals, just not groups. And, certainly things can get diluted down if you're going to, if your product strategy and your future product roadmaps being driven by a survey that you launched to, all households in America, I think it's probably going to end up being a less exciting potential, launch roadmap than it could otherwise be. But that said, I think, I do come with a more balanced point of view where I do also think that customer permission is really important because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're building a business, right? And we need to be creating products that people will ultimately be interested in and want to purchase. And that piece is important. And, that's kind of how Blue Land got started. Actually, Blue Land, it was never about cleaning products at all. Actually, it was all about this mission to eliminate single-use plastic packaging. And that's what, my co-founder and I were dead set on. And we were very open to that starting with sort of, anywhere, any type of product. So, first set of products we tested with people were toothpaste tablets. Then we tested shampoo and deodorant and a variety of things. And ultimately, we realized that cleaning products and hand soap were actually low interest categories where people were more open to trying a new brand, trying a new set of products, buying it off a different channel than they're used to. And we realized that was, a way for us to get our foot in the door and, really build out our brand around our mission.
No, that's all really wise and great information. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who's going to introduce our next segment, Mr. Lanier.
Yeah, well, everyone's excited about our small biz challenge that's coming up really soon. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs will have an opportunity to make elevator pitches talking about their business, as well as answer questions and complete tasks very fast and on their feet. It's going to be really exciting. So since you guys have been through this in real life, making elevator pitches, whether it was on Shark Tank or whether it's, dealing with venture capitalists and hearing it all the time, what advice can you give to not only these finalists that will be in this competition, but to all those entrepreneurs out there that will have to make real life elevator pitches and think fast on their feet when talking about their business?
I'm happy to go first. I would just say, bring your passion. Keep it simple, but bring your passion.
I mean, I just articulate your why you and no one else. And, what about your authentic lived experience puts you in a position to win? That's probably the best advice that I'd offer.
And ultimately, I just add to that because I agree with both of those. Just know your numbers. If it gets to that, ultimately, you are building a business. So make sure that you know your numbers inside and out, not just for the pitch, but for the sake of building your business.
Well, you all clearly know your numbers and have followed that great advice that you've been giving out. So I really want to thank Tristan, Alexa, and Sarah for the sound advice. Hopefully everyone was taking notes. I know I was writing stuff down like ABL, LITTP. I got all y'all stuff. Like I was listening, y'all. So hopefully everybody else was listening and taking notes. But I really want to thank you guys so much for your amazing contributions you guys had today. And Carla, as always, fabulous job. Great as well.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I was taking notes too, and I want to thank all of you all. As a reminder, the UPS Store Small Biz Challenge continues with our virtual studio event where you could win up to $25,000 for your small business. The last day to enter is May 8th. Visit inc.com/the UPS Store to submit your entry today. All right. We'll see you all in July when the Small Biz Challenge continues. Have an amazing and prosperous day.